The New York Knicks could have significant issues trading for Karl-Anthony Towns. The Knicks and Karl-Anthony Towns have been linked for a number of off seasons, but no more than this offseason, where we've seen the most reports and trade rumors for Cat coming to the Knicks. But why are the Knicks not swinging for a Cat trade as of right now? We're going to look into this and so much more today. But before we get started, guys, about 86% of you guys watching this video right now are not subscribed. We are on the road to 5,000 subscribers, and we could really use your support. If you like content like this, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button because it could really support all the great content that we're creating for you. And now, let's get started. The Karl-Anthony Towns contract is troublesome for the Knicks. According to a report from SNY's Ian Begley on Zach Lowe's podcast, he reported that the Knicks view Cat's contract as onerous, which basically means troublesome or very, very expensive. Management thinks Towns' salary is going to really hurt them. Ian Begley continued by stating the following. What I had heard was that some people felt that the salary was just too onerous, at least at this point. They felt that salary was really going to hurt them later in his deal. This is SNY's Ian Begley reporting on why the New York Knicks are hesitant in adding Karl-Anthony Towns. That contract and the money he's set to make is extremely high, and the Knicks are right to be careful and cautious in spending a lot of money and trading a lot of assets away to get Cat, who may not make you 100% better than you were last season and get you to the next level that you want to get to. Ian Begley continued his report by stating the following. But listen, I think obviously this dynamic can change at the drop of a dime. I do think, though, that if they, the Knicks in this case, love the idea of Towns right now, they could have had him. That's just my kind of read on the landscape in general. SNY's Ian Begley has been covering the New York Knicks team for years, and oftentimes his reports are seen to be credible and seem to be proven right. So you have to believe these reports coming from SNY's Ian Begley, an NBA insider, and I absolutely do. I think the New York Knicks could have absolutely obtained Karl-Anthony Towns right now if they didn't care about the contracts and they didn't care about the assets it took to get Towns in a New York Knicks jersey. I think there are too many connections for Towns and the Knicks right now. He's CAA, so he's always going to have a link in regards to the Knicks and Leon Rose, their president. So that's the first thing, right? He's been linked to a few years to the Knicks because of Leon Rose. That's another big thing. He fits the timeline. He's going to be 27 going into the next season, and that's going to make him perfect for the timeline of the New York Knicks. And let's not forget, he adds exactly what they need in terms of a big man that can shoot the three, that can drive, and then can shoot a mid-range. Karl-Anthony Towns checks those boxes absolutely. But as Ian Begley said, and I'm so happy I heard it because it was the best news I heard all day, the Knicks are reportedly out in trading for Karl-Anthony Towns for one significant reason: his contract. Towns will earn $36 million in 2023-2024, which will be the final season of the 5-year contract he signed in 2018. However, he signed a 4-year, $224 million Supermax extension with the Timberwolves in July 2022. And that contract will kick off during the 2024-2025 season. And by the way, it starts off at $50+ million in that first year. And it goes all the way to $60.7 million to the cap hit in 2026-2027. Oh yeah, in 2027-2028, he holds a player option worth up to $64.9 million. That type of money would make it more difficult for the Knicks to build a roster in the future. With the updated rules under the NBA's new collective bargaining agreement, the league will impose more significant penalties for the highest spending teams, and the Timberwolves will need to offload some salary. $60+ million for Karl-Anthony Towns starting in 2026, and then $50+ million starting in 2024-2025 for Karl-Anthony Towns. Now, a lot of people who are asking to trade for Karl-Anthony Towns are saying to do it now before he gets into that new contract, because on that new contract, as was just mentioned by Bleacher Report, that new collective bargaining agreement is going to make it so much harder to trade for these stars on these contracts without getting a significant penalty in the process. And a lot of teams don't want to get that penalty and hit that risk. So they rather move money and move players around to fit their roster easier and better and be away from that cap hit or that cap hold. But in this particular scenario, if the Knicks traded for Cat, they would be pressed at the cap so much each and every year, especially because his contract is so expensive and it goes up in value each and every year from 50 plus million to 60 plus million in 2026 for Karl-Anthony Towns. Now, don't get me wrong. As I've said before, I already understand why the New York Knicks want to add Karl-Anthony Towns, why they think Karl-Anthony Towns is a good piece for this team. Because if you look at the Miami series in the playoffs with the Knicks, you saw that at the 5 spot, while we had some good defense, we almost had zero offense from that spot. And at the free throw line, we were praying that Mitch could hit a shot. With Karl-Anthony Towns, the Knicks would not be praying as much because this man can shoot the three, can shoot the mid-range, can drive, has a great offensive game. Not as good of a defender as Mitchell Robinson is, but still a very capable defender in his own right. So Towns can give you and give the Knicks a lot of what they're looking for and what they need. And if you look at it from an outside view looking into the Knicks, you can see how Towns fits this team near perfectly in terms of his addition, what he can do, and what he can allow the Knicks to do in certain lineups. Towns can help support a small ball lineup very, very well, but he can also help support a big man lineup very, very well because of his skill set and what he can do. This is why adding Towns for the New York Knicks makes sense. And if you look at his stats for last year, 20 points per game, 8 rebounds, 4.8 assists, 61.8% true shooting, 49.5% from the field, 36.6% from 3, and he's 7 foot tall doing all of this. So this is exactly why the Knicks would want to trade for him. But as we said already, the amount that he's going to make based on these type of numbers and production he's going to give you during the regular season, it doesn't really add up to me. Those are good numbers. And for a man his height and size, it makes a lot of sense, again, why the Knicks would be entertaining the idea of adding him to the roster. But that contract is very, very hard to overlook. You know what else is hard to overlook? The playoffs. In the playoffs, Karl-Anthony Towns has averaged 18.6 points, 11.4 rebounds, and 2.1 assists in 16 games in his playoffs in his entire career, shooting 47.7% from the field and 33.3% from 3. So all of his numbers take a slight dip when he goes into the playoffs. He never turns it on. The lights are never brightest than in the playoffs, and he can't seem to turn it on in the playoffs. His production numbers dip, and we have to ask ourselves, after the last playoffs that we saw, do we really need another performer who can kill it during the regular season and fall short and disappear in the playoffs? Do we want to give ourselves more reasons to watch basketball like that? Because you can make the argument that if you add Towns, he'll help you during the regular season, but he may not be as impactful as you'll need him to be on the Knicks for the postseason. Because he hasn't done it in Minnesota, so why would he do it for the Knicks? And we need that in the postseason more than anything else. And to lock up this amount of money in Karl-Anthony Towns, to trade likely significant assets for Karl-Anthony Towns, for a player that does not show up when the lights are brightest in the playoffs and production goes down, that doesn't make sense to me. You're going to be trading a package for an all-star to get Towns, and he won't give you all-star play. And he's never given you all-star play in the playoffs. So why would you add him? For me, it doesn't make sense. And Mark Stein even notes that for the Timberwolves, Karl-Anthony Towns is the most movable piece because he has the most value right now. Per NBA insider Mark Stein, Towns is also generally regarded league-wide as far more tradable of the two between Gobert and Towns because he's younger, 27 to Gobert's 31, and his long distance shooting ability is very favorable to a lot of teams. Once again, Towns begins a projected 4-year, $235 million contract extension in 2024-2025. So as Mark Stein even just noted, the Timberwolves see Anthony Edwards as the face of their franchise, as they should, and they see Rudy Gobert as a piece for them, but they can't really trade Gobert because his value is not as significant, is not as high as Karl-Anthony Towns because Towns is younger, he can shoot the ball more, and his skill set, especially on offense, is a lot wider. I think at this point it's safe to say that the Knicks absolutely could have had and traded for Karl-Anthony Towns at this point in time. The reason that they didn't is because of that contract, what it does to their cap, and what it does to their long-term future plans in adding other pieces to this roster. Towns' contract is so expensive and troublesome and burdensome if you're trading for a player like that, and you got to make room for a player like that. It just hits you so hard. I love the fact that the New York Knicks are hesitant on this and likely out on trading for Karl-Anthony Towns at this point in time because of what that contract can do to your roster. I'm glad the Timberwolves will have him open for trade. I'm glad the Timberwolves will trade him hopefully and eventually. I just hope that they don't trade him to the New York Knicks because I think the Knicks paying him that much money, locking up that much money in cap space to him for a guy that doesn't show up in the playoffs and doesn't, in my opinion, get this Knicks team to the next level that a lot of us believe they can get to, I don't think it makes any sense trading for Towns today or at any point in time. For me, I am out on Karl-Anthony Towns and on the Knicks trading for him. That's just my personal opinion. If you like this video, go ahead and leave a comment below, smash that like button, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Until next time, Knicks fans. Peace.